So you've probably seen this before, right? It's gonna check if A is more than B. If A is more than B, it's gonna return A. And if it is not, then it's gonna return B. So why am I talking about this and returning from macros? Well, that's just what we just did. And the thing is, there are certain situations in which macros are much more convenient. But yeah, macros are much more convenient because they don't need to be type safe. So, or maybe you don't need to specify what types you're going to work with. And yeah, so that makes it convenient compared to something like defining each functions for each type. But it's a bit harder to return values from a macro than a function, because in a function you can usually just return, and it will return the function. It will break early, and then it will give you the value you are trying to return. But in a macro, usually you use a do while. Like for example, we have a, let's make a reserve, I guess. Reserve array size, and usually you make a do while, right? Do while, because you need the macro to be safe. And then like what's in a reserve? Malloc. I guess we'll check if array we're gonna check if the size is even more than the current capacity in the first place. Size, and if it is true, then we'll do a malloc or realloc. Not a malloc. Well, I guess it depends if the reserve will check first if it has been allocated or not. So if it is more, then we'll do a realloc. For simplicity's sake, we'll just do a realloc, and we will we can use typeof, but we can also use a void pointer, because well, we're just dealing with realloc here, which doesn't really need to be concerned with the type of whatever we're dealing with. So tmp realloc, and then we'll realloc the data, the array, comma, the size of the array. So array capacity, or actually no, we want to expand the thing, right? The array. So we use the parameter size, and then we times that by the size of the type. So size of, we will get the type from the data, and we dereference that, so we get the first element. Well, depends, I guess, but usually it should be the first element. And then we'll I guess we can check if realloc succeeds. Also, you of course can decide not to use a temporary variable, which will mean it's easier to deal with if you're using, if your macro is just it's not a do while, it's just expressions. But we can circumvent that because yeah, we'll just finish this first, right? So if realloc succeeds, then, or I guess we'll check if it doesn't succeed. If it fails, then we'll just break, and it will break out of the do while and print some error message. We don't need else. Then we'll just assign the TMP. Because it succeeds, we'll just assign the value of TMP, because we want to expand the original thing. So okay, and then yeah, that's it, right? But the problem, I guess, with this is you don't have a return type. It's a macro, and if you do a return 1, it doesn't have scope. So it's, if you put this in main, the preprocessor is gonna write this in the main, and it's gonna have the main scope, and it's gonna return from the program, from the whole program. So if you want to handle it in different ways, as you could with a function, well, you can't really just do that, right? So how do we fix this? Well, you can just pass a value, or return value, like return, and then like do this, right? And then in main you can just well, you need to declare first the return variable, and then you pass the return through the parameter. But in my opinion, that's a bit clunky. That's a bit, you don't really wanna pollute the parameter of the macro, because, well, it's gonna be annoying. So other than that, how do we do this? Well, we can just ditch the do while and make the whole thing just a series of expressions. So how do we do that? Well, we just change the ifs, because we won't have that. That's a what do you call it? One of the disadvantages of expressions. You can't have if or for or while, do while. You can't have that. You just have ternary and logical operators. And the syntax can be quite ugly. And also, you can't declare TMP here. But we'll just ignore that for a moment. So let's make this an if, right? So ternary. If we don't really need to resize in the first place, we'll just return 1. Alright. So put this at the bottom. And now we are we have some problem here, because, well, we can't have temporary variables here. So in case you want you want to handle the case where realloc fails, where you don't really want the whole pointer to just you know, it's like undefined behavior, right, or something. I don't know. So if realloc fails, if you don't have a if you have a temporary variable, your original whatever you have allocated, or original pointer, I guess, it's gonna be fine. But if you realloc in place, that might not be the case. So how do we fix this? Well, you can offload that to a static. Well, don't forget to put it in the header file if you make it static inline, but you can make it a static inline. I also have a macro for this, but it's just a static attribute, always inline. But oh my gosh, okay. And then we'll just do the realloc here. And why this works is that we're dealing with void pointers, because things like memcopy, realloc, malloc, they don't really need to care about the type, because, well, you're passing the size anyway, right? So we'll just make a function here, realloc, realloc, it'll take void pointer, array, and then size, right? Size t size, and then we'll just do it here. So tmp, and then if tmp realloc, use the array and the size, if it succeeds, we'll assign tmp to r. tmp, and then we can return 1. If not, well, that means we fail to realloc, which will return 0. So we can handle the case where realloc fails, because we know the return of tmp realloc. I forgot to put int here. And so yeah, so we've handled that. Oh, well, don't forget this. Well, you can I guess put it. It's probably better to put it here, but so let's put the function here. tmp realloc array data, and then we'll pass a pointer, because we're modifying the value of array, comma, size. Well, the size is the size times size of each element. So as before, data, right, and then we can do another ternary. So if it succeeds, well, I guess I'll put it here, right? If it succeeds, well, we'll assign, actually no, we've already assigned it inside, so I guess we just return 1. If it fails, 0. I guess we can put it here then, right? Okay. So what we've done here is we've offloaded stuff we can't do inside an expression or a chain of expression, or that are not expressions, that needs a temporary variable, or we've offloaded that to a function. And it's not a problem because we still don't have type safety, or we still don't need to declare different functions for each type. We just have this to take care of the operations that are not expressions, and then we still have one macro that's going to work with all types. And also, there are also cases where you will need a while loop, and the same, like if you have an array concatenate that will take a variadic parameter, you can, and then you want to grow the array by the factor of 2, so it's gonna grow twice its original capacity. You will need a do while, right, or a while loop. Well, you can also make or offload that do while in a function. So we actually don't need the return here, right? TMP grow, and then actually we want to return size t, right? Or yeah, we'll just have a size t. You can also pass a pointer to the, so it will assign it in place, but whatever. I guess it's, I don't know. I think this is much simpler. I don't know which one is faster, but okay, what do we need? Size, and then I guess it's gonna be while size is bigger than, okay, size t, capacity, alright, capacity, and then we can just do while so while array capacity is still, I guess this is not like this. While the array capacity is still smaller than the desired size, we'll just how do you call it? Grow it by 2. Okay, and then we can return array cap, right? Or you can also do pointer to size, so you can modify it in place. Well, you don't need pointer to size. If you do this, you don't need to return anything. But let me know which one is faster. I don't really know, but yeah. If you have a do while, you can do that. Also, in a for loop, you can, well, what is a for loop really? You're just repeating something over and over, right? Well, assignment is, which is probably what you're going to do in a for loop. If you have like a variadic macro and you don't want to use a variadic function, well, you can just unroll the loop with macros. So like instead of doing like for something like this, right? I don't know. Okay, this don't do this. Don't do this. But you can't. It's not an expression, right? Well, instead of doing that, we'll just do thing, and then we'll just repeat that, because if you do something like this, right? They're expressions. Assignments are expressions, which means this block will return ret++. It will check if it is non-zero, and then if you do like an AND here, if it is non-zero, it will execute the right thing, right? So, but it's not. It's gonna print 0 or 1, right? Or I don't know. I actually don't know. So, oh my gosh, the return is there. Yeah, it's 1. But yeah, because we have turned our, also parenthesize, just in case, right? Always parenthesize this with this. Oh my gosh. Okay, so because we have turned our do while macro to an expression, it's gonna have a return value. It's gonna return either 1 or 0. So when we do reserve, like a reserve something, we can check if the reserve, if it is correct, or I guess we can check if it is 0, then we can do some error handling. So we can like have an error label, for example, where we freeze stuff or something. We can do that without having to declare the return value outside and then pass it to the macro, which is, it's a bit annoying, right? And you can also have a global variable, a global return variable, and then you can assign it to that, and then I guess check that. But that's modifying global state, which means if your application, if your program is a multi-threaded program, that's bad. That's gonna create data dependency. Well, how do you know if a global variable is actually returning the value you're actually computing? Like, how do you know if multiple threads are actually using the same global variable? It's gotta be messy, but it's gonna create data dependency, so your program may be slower, because when you do something like this, right? Ret equals 2, or I guess it's better to if you do something like this, right? If you do something like this, it's not really, well, because the two operations here or expressions here are not really, it doesn't matter what the value of var is to ret when you try to assign 2 to ret, and also it doesn't matter what value ret is when you are trying to assign 3 to var. So your CPU or compiler can actually execute these two things in parallel, because, well, it doesn't really matter. Like uh it's not like you're incrementing things where you really need to check the last value before you start incrementing it, right? So you want to avoid that, and you shouldn't use a global variable, though it might sound like oh nice, so we don't actually need to pass a return value to a dual macro to check the return value. But, well, it's gonna create all sorts of bugs, I guess. So yeah, hopefully this helps. As I said, the syntax is just